feeling pretty happy as what pretty happy means for you. In fact, most of the time, we don't even really know how we feel. Let's talk about happiness, this thing that everybody seems to want, and yet not everybody can agree upon what exactly it is or how to get it. Now, I want to start by quoting a previous guest on the Huberman Lab podcast, and that is a colleague of mine at Stanford School of Medicine, Dr. Carl Diceroth, who's both a bioengineer and a clinician. That is, he's a psychiatrist who spends a lot of his time both running a laboratory and seeing patients, human patients, of course. And I once was at a meeting where I heard Carl say something to the extent of, we don't know what other people feel. In fact, most of the time, we don't even really know how we feel. And while that statement was meant to report several different things about the way that the brain works and emotions, etc., one of the things that he was emphasizing, and I know he was emphasizing it because he confirmed this for me, was the fact that language, things like the word happiness or joy or meaning or pleasure or delight, are actually not very precise when it comes to describing our brain and body states. So for instance, if I tell you I'm feeling pretty happy, I know what that means for me, at least in this moment, but you don't really know whether or not it means the same thing as what pretty happy means for you. If I say I'm extremely happy and I have a big grin, I have a grin on my face that I can't seem to wipe off my face, well, then you might get a sense of how much happier I am than pretty happy, but it's still hard to calibrate my level of internal state or happiness. And the same is true for you and for everybody else. And it's important for us to acknowledge this because at this point in human history, 2022, we don't really have a measurement like body temperature or heart rate variability, or even a way to measure neurochemicals in the brain and body that give us anything better than a crude correlate or an estimate at best of what happiness is. So that's really important to understand and to keep in mind throughout this episode. It doesn't mean that we cannot have a strong data-driven conversation about happiness and what brings us to a state of happiness, but it's very important to understand that language is not an ideal and maybe even a deficient tool in terms of describing our emotions and our states of mind and body.